As a part of our reliable and unreliable narrator unit, we are now going to move on to another story. We've already looked at The Treachery of an Image. We looked at Ransom of the Red Chief. We looked at 2 of Edgar Allan Poe's stories, Telltale Heart and The Black Cat. So we're going to apply the concepts that we've already learned from all of those texts and apply it to Allegory of the Cave, which is written by Plato. So to review, we had looked at different versions of Poe's writing and analyzed the impact of information from different narrative perspectives. We also looked at suspense and how it impacts the understanding and the meaning of a story. We also looked at different perspectives and rewriting from different perspectives. And we looked at how a narrator could be considered reliable or unreliable. Today, you're going to work through listening to the audio of the Allegory of the Cave, identifying Plato's message in the story, and completing a series of split-page notes questions. To give you some background knowledge before you read Allegory of the Cave, it is written by Plato, but Socrates and Plato were both famous Greek philosophers whose ideas and works today are still read and studied. I believe Mr. Fliss has already given you some background information and further activities about Socrates, so these people should not be unfamiliar to you. Socrates never wrote anything down, which is why most of what we know about Socrates has come from Plato, which is one of his students. So where you see it in our classroom is when we engage in Socratic seminars. This is a practice of learning through questioning, which was coined by Socrates. So what I'd like you to do now is think about the quote that's written on this page. What does the quote mean to you? The unexamined life is not worth living. Stop this video now and answer that question in your notes packet. The meaning of the quote that you just responded to could mean that we don't take things at face value or believe something just because we see it. Part of being human is questioning the world around us to gain a deeper understanding of things. This is going to be really evident in the Allegory of the Cave. The second quote I'd like you to look at is, "We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light." Stop this video now and answer your question as what you think this means in your notes packet. One possible meaning of this quote could have been, light typically represents being freed from something or having a change in perspective. Plato is saying it is unfortunate when people are afraid to learn new things or more closely examine something to determine a deeper truth or new understanding. So far, what we've learned about Plato's and Socrates before reading Allegory of a Cave is that we should not judge a book by its cover. Rather, we should question our surroundings. And it is important to be open-minded to new experiences to deepen understanding. These 2 concepts are going to be clearly applied in the story Allegory of a Cave. Before we go to read our story, you need to be aware of 2 things. 1, what an allegory is. An allegory is a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral. The story, the Allegory of the Cave, is a complex, riddled with hidden meanings, so you can read the story multiple times to gain multiple understandings, which is what we're going to do through the series of 4 lessons. What I'd like you to look at right now is the picture that I've posted on this page. If you'll notice, you'll see people on both sides of a wall. What I want you to do is just take a few minutes and look at this and try and figure out what the meaning is, because this is the best visual interpretation of the story that's out there. Pause the video now if you have to. Next, what we're going to do is read the story. So please pause this video, go to the audio video that reads the story for you, and then come back to this video when you're done reading part 1. Okay, now that you've read part 1 of the story, this is what you should have understood from part 1, that it sets up the rest of the allegory. The prisoners only know the images, and their reality is simply a projection of shadows on a wall. Those who have the objects and are holding them know that the objects are their reality. However, this is different from the prisoners in that they are seeing the actual objects rather than the shadows of the objects. What you need to do now is look at this quote and respond to it in your questions packet. So the quote reads, "Some light, of course, is allowed them, namely fire that casts its glow towards them from behind them, being above and at some distance." So the question you need to respond to is, what is the difference between seeing an object directly and seeing its shadow cast on a wall? If you're having difficulty answering this question, think about a projector. What does a projector do? Well, it displays an image by looking at it and then projecting it onto something else. So think about how that applies to our story, and that if you zoom in on an image or zoom away from an image, how it distorts that image from what you are seeing on the projection. Please stop this video and answer this question in your packet. Okay, finally, what I'd like you to do is to answer questions 1 and 2 of your split page notes. The questions should read, what is in front of the men in the cave? What is behind them? Describe what the men see. What is their reality or truth, and how does it differ from the others? We've already gone over a little bit of this, so please kind of pull from the previous video and your knowledge and answer those questions now. Okay, the final part of this lesson is going to be drawing a visual interpretation. So if you need to, reread the very first paragraph of part 1, which is titled The Cave. After you've reread it, visually draw your interpretation of the setting, and be sure to include all details that were written in the text. Use colored pencils as necessary.